Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Kane's independent media production. Today we're tackling a kind of fundamental question. What is the difference between one-ply and two-plies on your snare batter? So the primary difference between a two-ply batter head and a one-ply batter head on your snare drum is that a two-ply batter head is two plies, and a one-ply batter head is one ply. All right, thanks so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell below so you can hear about all of our new videos. Thanks for checking out our Patreon, a lot of great stuff over there. And lastly, we would love to know what differences you find in a two-ply versus a one-ply drum head. In all seriousness, there's actually a lot of conversation about this that, as we've talked about it here, feels a little bit like it's coming from a misguided direction, and we wanted to just have the audio speak for itself, along with our personal experiences of utilizing these things in actual playing situations, recording, and also teching. We're going to go through multiple tunings on both of the heads today. We went to great lengths to try to get the exact same pitches in the batter between the two-ply and the one-ply so that we're having more of a true comparison. The reso head is staying, we're not touching it at all, and we're going to run through basically everything to a click and then some other playing examples so that we can see how it behaves in other situations. Today's heads are going to be a G1 single-ply coated 10 mil and then a G2 coated two-ply, which is two plies of 7 mil film sandwiched together. It's very important to know that a G2 is not twice the thickness of a G1. All of these multi-ply drum heads utilize all sorts of different thicknesses. So thinking of a two-ply as two one-plies is really not the way to go. We're going to do things a little bit differently today than other times that we've compared things here. We're going to do back-to-backs of similar tunings with the different drum heads rather than doing the whole one-ply and then the whole two-ply thing. Our first contender is the single-ply in the low tuning we chose for today. Now, without getting into a lot of semantics about this, again, we can just let our ears do the listening. I personally like the two-ply tuned a little bit lower, and I believe that is because of the added mass. It sort of focuses the fundamental. It feels better to hit at that range without any muffling, and generally speaking, this is the choice I make if I'm going to be doing something like this. Because of the mass, to get the same pitch, we have to have slightly more tension on the head, so lower tensions with a thicker head, generally speaking, are going to stay tuned a little bit easier than if you're using a one-ply head, and additionally, they're going to feel a little more springy, again, just because of the mass and that little bit of added tension. It's worth thinking also about stick choice in these situations, because a bigger stick is going to behave differently at a given tension of a drum. It's also going to behave differently depending on how thick of a head you're using. Let's hear a little more G1 at this tune. The nice thing about the G1 down in this range is that it has a lot of air in the sound, and it makes a really big sort of resonant situation in the snare wires for rolly stuff and for anything where you actually want a broader sound where what you're doing is essentially overlapping and making more of a legato kind of expression on the drum. There's going to be more sensitivity with this head. It's not hugely different. The feel is very different, however, especially when you're getting into lower dynamic ranges. There's going to be sort of a choose your own adventure kind of thing with this where different people are going to like different ones. But for sure, if you're thinking in terms of sensitivity, starting with a single ply and going from there is definitely the way to go. Now, time for a little more G2. All right, moving on to tuning number 2, our medium tuning for the day. Same thing, back to back. Now this is a range that actually when I first put the G1 on today, I ended up at, and I go, this is the range that I like to tune a one-ply coated head to on a snare drum. And for that reason, it is my preference to use the single ply for this range. And for me, again, it does more come back to feel than anything else. It feels incredible to play on. It's not boxy. It's got a lot of warmth in it. It just feels good to hit, whether it's really light or super aggressive. As with anything where we use the word feel to describe it, this is entirely subjective. It is subject to your way of playing, your technique, the sticks that you choose, the dynamic range that you're playing in, all of that. But suffice to say that to me, if I'm in this range, I'm choosing a single ply, going for a feel and an overall behavior that I like, and I'll move to a double ply if I start to be concerned about durability. All right, time for a little more of the G1. At this range with the G1, it feels to me like a perfect sort of middle ground of a snare drum. We've got a Supraphonic, we have a single ply coated on it, and this to me has enough sort of low presence, medium presence, sparkle, and articulation to where I would probably be comfortable with starting with a drum tuned like this in most any situation and deviate from here. And then, if I need to change the heads, then we'll do that. On the flip side with the G2, in addition to durability, you are still contending with this mass and this slightly different amount of tension to achieve the same pitch, which is also going to result in a quiet little suppression of the overtones and focusing of the overall sound, whether we're hitting the drum in the center or catching the rim. All right, it's time to make them scream. We are going to do the high tuning now, starting with the G1. Now, much like with the low tuning, this isn't as high as the drum will go. This is a usable, very high tuning on a traditional size drum. So this is very bright. It's very, very loud. It's got a lot of overtones in it. It feels very aggressive where I am. My earplugs are not quite enough to manage this if I'm really hitting it as hard as I can. I have to say this is a sound in the 90s that I heard a lot. It's got a nostalgic spot for me with the One-Ply or the Two-Ply. It's a specific kind of behavior that I don't use on gigs that much anymore, but very, very special, and I was kind of surprised at how I ended up feeling about this example. Now, just to set some of my internal biases here out on the table, this is a situation where I would have expected to choose the One-Ply at this tension because it's just what I thought was the right thing to do. And in my mind, Two-Ply heads are going to choke sooner, or they're going to get boxy, or essentially something's going to go wrong if I really crank them up. And surprisingly, I really preferred the Two-Ply in this situation. And again, it's hard to talk about this stuff because the audio and the feel are not always quite in line with each other. But one thing about this that is definitely true is that if you're playing larger sticks or you like a really powerful sound out of a high-tuned drum, a Two-Ply is giving me a lot of energy because of the amount of mass that the head is that I'm moving with the stick. Now, I don't want to discount the G1 by any means. It's doing its job beautifully. I am just making sure to express that I have been surprised even today after many years of doing stuff like this for myself, just comparing things. We do it here all the time. And I got proven wrong in my own head today, and that is really why we do these things. If there's strange biases in our head, we got to always test them so we make sure that we're not believing things that aren't actually true. All right, let's go back to the G2. Now for the PSA. No two Two-Ply heads are created equal, and for what it's worth, no two One-Ply heads are exactly created equal, whether you're talking about between brands or within lines within a brand. And the only way for us to know what's going to work for us is to experiment as much as we can. And also listen to people that we love to listen to and see what they're using, even just to get a loose idea of what that might behave like. I've never actually cranked up a G2 on a snare drum before. Today was a big surprise for me. Now I'm excited to do it. That's exactly what we're talking about here. I got surprised. We got surprised here. And ultimately, the world is full of surprises like this if we just give ourselves a chance and try something new. It is worth reiterating also, because it gets talked about sometimes but not enough, the feel thing with these heads is an enormous consideration ultimately for what you decide to use with consistency. If it's an experiment, we can do whatever we want, but if you're looking for a head to count on, the feel is so much of it, and it is not a thing that we can show you in a video, and it's not a thing that you can see when you see your favorite players play. But the sticks you use, the tension you like, and the head that you choose affect your playing a lot, regardless of the sound you're actually producing. And in addition to experimenting for the sake of sound, experimenting for the sake of feel, which includes plies, thicknesses, diameters, muffling, coating, trying out different sticks, all of those things, they affect your experience as a player. And as much as people talk about the audience not noticing, it's really important to remember that while we're playing, what we notice also matters. Alright, that about does it. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell below so you hear about all of our new videos that we've got coming out. Lots of exciting things, lots of other exciting things over on the Patreon. Cymbal series, lots of things popping off, including anecdotes, other playing examples from here. Go over and check it out, see if there's a tier that's right for you, see what the options are. We would love it if you could be a part of that. It really keeps us going here. And finally, One-Ply heads, Two-Ply heads, tell us your stories. Brands, makes, models, thicknesses, diameters, what kind of music you play, what kind of sticks you play, how hard you hit it, how hard you don't hit it. We want to know because we're stuck here just doing our own thing.